Mira O'Connor had always dreamed of exploring the stars. She never imagined she'd find herself on the polished crystalline floors of the Universal Academy of All Species, an institution that seemed more like a legend than reality. The academy was perched on the barren moon of Trinar 5, its translucent towers glowing faintly against the eternal black of space. From her spot in the sprawling main hall, Mira could see students of every imaginable form, some with chitinous exoskeletons, others encased in shimmering plasma, and a few that seemed to exist only as flickering patterns of light. She was the only human, a distinction that came with an uncomfortable mix of fascination and disdain from the others. As Mira moved hesitantly toward the auditorium, she caught snippets of alien languages, some melodic, others guttural, all incomprehensible to her untrained ear. Still, she pressed forward, clutching her small satchel of supplies, as if it could shield her from the judgmental glances that followed her. "Is that the primitive species everyone's been talking about?" The voice was sharp, accompanied by the click of mandibles. Mira turned to see a tall insectoid figure, its multifaceted eyes glinting with amusement. A few of its companions buzzed in laughter, their wings producing a soft hum that reverberated through the hall. "She doesn't even have neural interfaces," another voice chimed in, this one belonging to a crystalline entity that seemed to refract light into a kaleidoscope of colors as it moved. Mira's cheeks burned, but she refused to look back. She had been warned this might happen. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, their technology crude compared to the advanced civilizations that had been traversing the stars for millennia. The decision to admit her to the academy had been controversial, with many arguing that her species lacked the sophistication to contribute meaningfully. But Mira wasn't here to prove anything to them. She was here because she loved to learn. The auditorium was enormous, its ceiling an ever-shifting display of the cosmos. Stars and nebulae danced above the students as they took their seats, casting a faint, ethereal glow. Mira found a spot near the back, grateful for the semi-anonymity it provided. She wasn't sure she was ready to draw more attention to herself. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the room. A glowing figure materialized at the front of the auditorium, its translucent form pulsating with colors that shifted in rhythm with its words. This was Instructor Velquor, one of the Academy's most renowned teachers. Its body resembled a floating jellyfish, its tendrils trailing delicate patterns of light that seemed to draw the students into its orbit. "Welcome, Sentience," Velquor began, its voice resonating in a way that seemed to bypass the ears and go straight to the mind. "Today, we embark on a journey into the realm of logic and thought, a domain where the mind's capacity to question and to reason is tested beyond the limits of its design." Mira leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. She had read about Velquor's reputation before arriving. It was said to be a master of puzzles, capable of crafting riddles so intricate that entire civilizations had devoted centuries to unraveling them. The thought of being in its class was both exhilarating and intimidating. "Each of you," Velquor continued, its tendrils glowing a soft violet, "comes from a culture that has mastered the art of thought in its own way. But today you will confront a challenge that transcends individual perspectives. A riddle." The room buzzed with anticipation. Mira could hear the whispers of her peers, some eager, others skeptical. She noticed the insectoid from earlier, seated with its group near the front, its antennae twitching in excitement. "The riddle I present," Velquor said, "has been posed to the greatest minds of the galaxy for millennia. No species has yet solved it, but do not despair. The purpose of this exercise is not merely to find the answer, but to explore the process of understanding itself." With a flick of its tendrils, Velquor conjured a holographic display. Symbols, shapes, and glowing pathways filled the air, forming an intricate pattern that seemed almost alive. Mira stared at it, her mind racing to decipher its meaning. "The riddle is this," Velquor announced. I am a key that opens no door. I am a guide that leads to no path. I am known by all, but understood by none. What am I? The words hung in the air, heavy with significance. Mira felt a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't just the complexity of the riddle that struck her, it was the way Velcour delivered it, as if the answer held some profound truth about existence itself. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, a massive reptilian being, with scales that shimmered like molten metal, raised a clawed hand. Its voice was deep and resonant. "Is it time?" Velcour's tendrils shifted to a faint blue, a color Mira was beginning to associate with disappointment. "An admirable attempt, but incorrect," it said. "Time is a concept tied to many doors and paths. It does not meet the criteria." Another student, a crystalline entity with a voice like wind chimes, offered its guess. "Is it truth?" Velcour's glow brightened slightly. "Closer, but still incorrect. Truth is often understood, even if imperfectly." One by one, students from across the galaxy took their turns, each offering an answer more abstract than the last. Knowledge, infinity, consciousness. Each was dismissed with patient explanation. The insectoid from earlier even ventured a guess, its arrogance replaced by a tentative uncertainty. Still, Velcour found no satisfaction. Mira sat in silence, her mind turning the riddle over and over. She thought about the words, the patterns in the hologram, and the way Velcour had emphasized the importance of understanding the essence of the question. The answers offered by the others were sophisticated, even poetic, but they all seemed to miss something fundamental. Something simple. Her heart pounded as a thought crystallized in her mind. She hesitated, unsure if she should speak. The room was filled with beings far more advanced than her, and the idea of drawing their attention was daunting. But the more she considered the riddle, the more certain she became of her answer. Summoning her courage, she raised her hand. The room fell silent. Heads turned, antennae twitched, and eyes, both physical and otherwise, focused on her. The insectoid sneered, its mandibles clicking softly. "Let the human try," it said, its tone dripping with derision. Velcour's tendrils pulsed with a soothing green light. "All voices are welcome in this space," it said. "Speak, Mira O'Connor." Mira swallowed hard and stood. Her voice trembled at first, but grew steadier as she spoke. "The answer is a question." A hush fell over the room. Velcour's tendrils flared in a brilliant gold, a color so vibrant it seemed to fill every corner of the auditorium. The instructor floated closer to Mira, its presence both imposing and awe-inspiring. "Explain," it said, its voice resonating with an intensity that sent a shiver through her. Mira took a deep breath. A question is something everyone knows, because we all ask them, but it doesn't open a literal door, nor does it lead to a specific path. And most importantly, while we all ask questions, the act of understanding them is what drives us forward. The question itself isn't the answer, it's the start of discovery. Velcour's form shimmered, its golden glow intensifying. A deep, resonant hum filled the room, a sound that seemed to vibrate through Mira's very bones. "For thousands of years," Velcour said, its voice filled with wonder, "no species has solved this riddle. It is not just the answer that is correct, it is your reasoning. The human mind, with its unique blend of curiosity and simplicity, has succeeded where the complex failed." The room erupted into murmurs of astonishment. Mira looked around, unsure if the reactions were positive or negative. The insectoid from earlier was silent, its antennae drooping. Velcour turned to address the class. "Let this moment be a lesson," it said. "Knowledge is not always about complexity. Sometimes the simplest perspective reveals truths no intricate mind can fathom. As the students filed out, Mira felt a mix of emotions: relief, pride, and a lingering uncertainty about what this moment would mean for her future at the academy. As she gathered her things, Velcor floated toward her. "You have a gift, young human," it said. "Never lose it. The galaxy has much to learn from your kind." Mira nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she felt like she belonged. The Universal Academy hummed with activity long after the lecture concluded. The crystalline halls resonated with whispers, discussions, and occasional bursts of laughter, yet Mira's mind remained locked on what had just transpired. She had answered Velcor's riddle, something no one else, not the luminaries of countless worlds, not the prodigies of species infinitely older and more advanced than her own, had managed to do. The weight of it pressed against her chest, mingling exhilaration with an almost paralyzing sense of unease. She found herself walking through one of the quieter corridors, where walls of shifting colors reflected her wavering mood. The Academy's corridors seemed designed to evoke a sense of endless possibility, their surfaces pulsing gently as if alive. Mira appreciated the beauty, but at this moment the environment only deepened her feeling of isolation. Her species was still so new to this vast, interconnected galaxy, and she had just placed herself firmly in the spotlight. The sound of claws clicking against the floor broke her reverie. She turned to see the tall insectoid from earlier, its multifaceted eyes fixed on her. It moved with deliberate purpose, flanked by two companions whose buzzing wings emitted a low, menacing hum. "You," the insectoid said, its voice sharp and accusatory. "What trickery did you use?" "Trickery?" Mira replied, her voice more defensive than she intended. The insectoid's antennae twitched. "That riddle has been unsolved for millennia. Do you truly expect anyone to believe that a species as primitive as yours could unravel it?" Mira bristled. She'd encountered this kind of condescension before, but never with such naked hostility. "I didn't trick anyone," she said firmly. "I just thought about it differently." "Differently," it repeated, the word dripping with disdain. "Convenient excuse. Velcor is a respected mind. Do you think your primitive reasoning is superior to the logic of the Saranth Collective, or the crystalline wisdom of the Lycor?" "I didn't say that," Mira shot back. "But maybe, just maybe, being primitive, as you like to call it, gives me a perspective you don't have." The insectoid's mandibles clicked together in a way that Mira interpreted as frustration. It leaned closer, its height towering over her. "You'd best watch yourself, human. The Academy values intellect, not arrogance." The buzzing of its companions grew louder, but the insectoid raised one claw to silence them. With a final disdainful glance, it turned and skittered down the corridor, its entourage following closely behind. Mira exhaled slowly, her hands shaking. She realized she'd been clutching her satchel tightly, the strap digging into her palm. She didn't have time to dwell on the encounter. A soft chime echoed through the halls, signaling the beginning of the next lecture cycle. Mira hurried to her next class, her thoughts racing. The rest of the day passed in a blur. The Academy's curriculum was as varied as its student body, encompassing disciplines Mira hadn't even known existed. She struggled to keep up with concepts that other students seemed to grasp effortlessly. Even the basic functions of the Academy's learning tools were foreign to her, and her efforts to understand them only underscored how far behind she was. By the time the day ended, Mira was exhausted. She found her way to the dormitory wing, a sprawling complex where students from all corners of the galaxy resided. Her room was small but comfortable, its design adapted to her human physiology. A single window offered a breathtaking view of Triner V's barren surface, the planet below it shrouded in swirling storms of green and gold. Mira collapsed onto her bed, staring up at the ceiling. The events of the day replayed in her mind, each moment tinged with doubt. She had answered Velkor's riddle, but what did it mean? Had she truly accomplished something extraordinary, or was she merely an anomaly, a fluke that others would dismiss or resent? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. She sat up, startled. Visitors were rare. Most students kept to themselves or interacted only within their species. Rising cautiously, she opened the door to find an unexpected figure waiting. Velkor hovered in the hallway, its translucent form glowing with a faint, calming green light. Mira blinked in surprise. "Instructor Velkor," she said, stepping aside to let it enter. "Myra O'Connor," Velkor said, its voice resonating softly. "May I?" Alice. "Of course," Mira replied, gesturing awkwardly to the small sitting area in the corner of the room. Velkor floated inside, its tendrils trailing faint trails of light that lingered briefly in the air. "You performed admirably today," Velkor said, "but I sense you are troubled." Mira hesitated. "I guess I wasn't expecting so much attention, or the backlash." Velkor's glow shifted to a thoughtful blue. "The reaction of your peers is not unexpected. The Academy is a place of great potential, but also of great pride. Many students measure their worth by their achievements, and your success challenges their preconceptions." "That's putting it mildly," Mira muttered, thinking of the insectoid's sneer. Velkor's tendrils pulsed sympathetically. "Conflict is an inevitable part of growth. But I came to speak with you not about their reactions, but about your answer." Mira looked up, surprised. "You said it was correct." "It was," Velkor said, "but the simplicity of your reasoning belies its depth. Tell me, Mira, how did you arrive at your conclusion?" Mira thought for a moment, then said, "I just listened to the words. I thought about what they meant. Not in a complex way, but in a personal way. Everyone else was trying to think of abstract concepts, but I just tried to understand what the riddle was really asking." Velkor's glow brightened. "Precisely. Many beings, in their pursuit of knowledge, lose sight of the value of perspective. They seek answers in complexity, believing that greater understanding lies in greater intricacy. But sometimes, it is the simplest truth that eludes them." Mira felt a flicker of pride, but it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. "Do you really think humans have something unique to offer? Compared to all the other species here, we're barely out of the cradle." Velkor's tendrils rippled with what Mira interpreted as amusement. "Every species begins as you have. Every civilization takes its first uncertain steps into the cosmos. What makes humans unique is not your technology or your knowledge, but your curiosity. You possess a remarkable ability to ask questions, not only of others, but of yourselves. That is a gift, Mira. Do not underestimate it." Mira nodded slowly, her thoughts spinning. Velkor's words were encouraging, but they also carried an unspoken challenge. If humanity's strength lay in its curiosity, then it was her responsibility to embody that trait, to explore, to question, and to push the boundaries of what she thought possible. As Velkor prepared to leave, it paused at the door. "Mira," it said, its voice soft but resonant. "The answer you gave today was not just correct. It was significant. There is a reason no other species has solved that riddle. It is not merely a test of logic, but a reflection of the mind that seeks to answer it. Your success is not the end of a journey, but the beginning." Mira watched as Velkor floated away, its glowing form disappearing into the corridor. She closed the door and leaned against it, her mind racing. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, she felt a sense of purpose. Velkor's words had planted a seed of determination within her, and she resolved to nurture it. The galaxy was vast, filled with mysteries and challenges she could barely comprehend. But Mira O'Connor, the first human at the Universal Academy, was ready to face them, one question at a time. Out of the corner of her eye, the following morning, Mira woke to the faint hum of the Universal Academy coming alive. Her small room, bathed in the pale light of Trinar V's distant sun, felt like an island in a vast uncharted ocean. She lay still for a moment, the weight of Velkor's parting words lingering in her mind. There was a reason no species had solved the riddle until her, and the significance of that truth filled her with equal parts pride and apprehension. After dressing quickly, she made her way to the dining hall. The room was an architectural marvel, its domed ceiling displaying a breathtaking panorama of the cosmos. Tables floated at varying heights, accommodating beings of all sizes and forms. Mira chose a quieter corner, her tray of unfamiliar yet surprisingly palatable food in hand. Her solitude didn't last long. A shadow fell across her table, and she looked up to see a crystalline figure standing before her. It refracted the light into a dazzling array of colors, its angular form shifting as if in constant flux. Mira recognized it as Licorn, a member of the Licor species and one of the students who had attempted to solve Velkor's riddle. "You were the one who answered Velkor's challenge," Licorn said, its voice musical and layered, as if a choir were speaking in unison. Mira nodded cautiously. "I was." Licorn tilted its head, or what Mira assumed was its head, its facets catching the light. "Many of us are unsettled." The riddle was considered unsolvable, a test of intellect beyond the grasp of any one mind, yet you, a human, answered it with apparent ease. "I wouldn't call it easy," Mira replied. "I just looked at it differently." "This is precisely what intrigues me," Lycrum said, lowering itself onto the opposite side of the table. "You see, the Licor have spent centuries perfecting our cognitive structures, refining our ability to perceive and analyze. Yet we failed. What is it about humans that allowed you to succeed?" Mira hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I don't think it's about humans being better or smarter. Maybe it's just, we don't have the same expectations. We're new to all of this. We don't think like you do, because we haven't been shaped by the same experiences." Lycren hummed softly, a sound that resonated like a tuning fork. "A perspective unbound by precedent. Fascinating. I must admit, I did not expect to find insight from one so young or so unrefined." Mira raised an eyebrow. "Thanks, I guess?" Lycren's facets shifted again, a subtle gesture Mira was beginning to recognize as amusement. "Take it as a compliment. Curiosity is a rare and valuable trait, one that may serve you well in the days to come. But be wary, not all here will view your success with such interest." As Lickery rose and drifted away, Mira felt a pang of unease. The crystalline being's words echoed Velkor's own warning. She was beginning to understand that her success, while celebrated by some, was a threat to others. The day's lectures passed in a haze. Mira struggled to focus, her mind preoccupied with the undercurrents of tension she sensed around her. She caught glimpses of the insectoid from the day before, always in the periphery, its antennae twitching as if monitoring her every move. She overheard whispers, fragments of conversation that stopped abruptly whenever she drew near. By the time the final lecture ended, Mira's nerves were frayed. She decided to visit the Academy's central atrium, a vast space filled with flora from dozens of worlds. It was said to be a place of peace and contemplation, and Mira hoped it might offer some solace. The atrium was even more beautiful than she had imagined. Towering trees with luminous leaves cast dappled light across the pathways, while streams of liquid that shimmered like molten gold wound through the gardens. Mira wandered aimlessly, letting the tranquil atmosphere soothe her troubled thoughts. She was admiring a cluster of flowers that seemed to sing softly when a familiar voice interrupted her reverie. "Still pretending to belong, I see." Mira turned to find the insectoid standing behind her, its mandibles clicking with barely concealed contempt. It was alone this time, its companions absent, but its presence was no less intimidating. "I don't have to pretend," Mira said, her voice steady despite the knot of fear in her stomach. "I earned my place here, just like you." The insectoid's antennae quivered. "You think solving one riddle makes you our equal? You are nothing more than an anomaly, a fleeting curiosity. Your kind does not belong in a place of such sophistication." Mira felt a surge of anger, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Why does it bother you so much? If I'm just a fleeting curiosity, why waste your time on me?" The insectoid hissed, its segmented body shuddering with barely restrained fury. "You insult our legacy with your presence. The Academy is a place of achievement, of refinement, not a refuge for primitives." Mira took a step forward, her fists clenched. "You're afraid, aren't you? Afraid that someone like me, someone who doesn't fit your definition of refined, might actually have something to offer. That must be hard for you to accept." The insectoid recoiled slightly, its mandibles clicking in agitation. For a moment, it seemed on the verge of lashing out, but then it straightened, its posture rigid. "This is not over, human," it said coldly. "You will learn your place." It turned and stalked away, its clawed feet clicking against the pathway. Myra watched it go, her heart pounding. She had stood her ground, but the encounter left her shaken. As she turned back to the garden, she noticed someone watching her. A figure emerged from the shadows of a towering tree, their form humanoid but obscured by a shimmering cloak. "You handled that well," the figure said, their voice smooth and measured. "Who are you?" Mira asked warily. The figure stepped closer, revealing a face that was strikingly human-like, though their features were sharper, more angular. Their eyes glowed faintly, a trait Mira had never seen in any human. "Call me Saren," they said. "I've been observing you, Mira O'Connor. You've made quite an impression." Mira frowned. "Observing me? Why?" "Because you're different," Saren said simply. "The Academy is a place of learning, yes, but it is also a crucible. Ideas clash here, and not all are welcomed equally. Your presence disrupts the balance, and that makes you intriguing." "I'm not trying to disrupt anything," Mira said. "I just want to learn." Saren smiled faintly. "And yet, by simply existing, you challenge the assumptions of those around you. That is no small thing." They paused, their glowing eyes studying her intently. "Be cautious, Mira. The Academy is a place of great opportunity, but it is also a place of hidden dangers. Not everyone will appreciate your perspective." Mira nodded slowly. "I've already noticed." "Good," Saren said. "Then you are beginning to understand. Keep asking questions, Mira. The answers may surprise you." With that, they turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Mira alone once more. She stood there for a long time, her mind racing. The galaxy, she realized, was not just vast in its size, but in its complexities. Every answer seemed to lead to more questions, and Mira knew she had only just begun to scratch the surface.